Well, hi everyone. This is for Team Canada Commonwealth group for 2018. Wish you guys all the success, and I'm hoping I can do my little part with helping you with some spider patterns. So this is an accumulation of information that I've gathered from many different people, from Davey Watton, Stevie Munn, Andy Kitchener, a lot of guys from England that fish spiders. In North Country, Carl Hutchison, who's a 5-time world fly casting champ who grew up in that area. So I'm just trying to share with you all the things I have come across. So let's start with hooks. There's a lot of different hooks out in the market that people are using. The traditional North Country spider was tied on a straight eye hook, 1x long, with a double wide gap. I still think that's traditional. I still think that has the best hooking power out there, but you can certainly tie them. So in this case, what I'm using is the BL hens. It's not, guys, don't get this wrong. This is what I use for material, because this is what I've kind of looked across the world. I'm not trying to sell you anything, but find yourself a hook that has this kind of a configuration to it. So you're looking for something, it's forged, standard wire, or even a 1X, bent end point, straight eye. So basically I like the wide gap, and the reason being is if even on this size 12, even though we have basically a size 14 body, we have a size 10 gape. So that increases the hooking power. You can always run things like, again, a standard wet fly hook, round bend, 2x strong. This is the BL 200. These certainly work, but as you can see, that the hook shank length is a little bit longer. You can also run something similar again to a BL 254. Again, it's a 2x wire, as you can tell here. So whatever you decide, the hook you need to fish with really at the end of the day is one you have most faith and most comfort in. I don't care what brands you use. I choose this because I think, in my mind, this is the best hook in the world market. These are made in the Hayabusa factory, which is one of the top of the line hook manufacturers in the world. But like I said, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to teach you guys how to tie a proper North Country spider. So a few things that you're going to need is the hook, then we have threads. There's all kinds of threads on the market. The originals were tied with something like hand-woven silks. Then industrialization came, and we had things from Gudebrod and Parasol. So these are some of the original threads. As you can tell, they're pretty thin. This is actually what's called a superfine by Gordon Griffiths. No longer made. The Parasols are no longer made. There's a French company I use, ASOE. I obviously don't speak French, but they're from France. They're the only continental European company that has their own silkworms and has their own silk farm. It's very expensive thread, but it is certainly as traditional as it's going to get. Easier to get on the market. Zemperfly came out with what's called a pure silk. And it's a twisted silk, a 2-strand, and it comes in a host of colors from this golden olive, purple, pale olive, of course, and there's the reds, the Danica, which is one of my favorite colors to work with. There is also a vintage orange, and again that and this would be similar. Okay, this is the French one. They're very similar. All the silks, right from Parasol's time to Gordon Griffiths, before the discontinuation of silks, used what was called the Edmonds and Lee color chart, which was developed in the early part of the industrialization in the 1800s. This is a color chart that still holds true for aquatic insects, not just only with silks, but with many dyeing processes and procedures. It's the foundation of color charting for dyeing threads, fur, feather. We've sort of got away from that here in Europe, but it is still the mainstay. So from there's a host of animals, and I'll show you. This is a woodcock wing. So this is the top side, and this is the bottom side. The feathers that we use are what's called coverts: lesser, greater, and marginals. So we have 3 layers of feathers. I'll try to. So these are the marginal coverts. You can see them here. Okay. These are the lessers, and these are the greater, pardon me, and then the lessers. It is from this area in here, on these under coverts, that most spiders are made from in the smaller sizes, 14s, 16s, and 18s. 12s, 14s, and 10s come down into the greater, and then the marginals certainly for larger flies. Other side of the wing has exactly the same layout of feathers. You have the greater, or the lesser, the greater, and the marginals. This is where we select, for the most part, most of our feathers for tying North Country spiders, whether it's on a woodcock wing or even if it's on a starling. Okay? So one of the things you'll notice on these feathers that the barring is not equal. I'll just pull, not in all cases, but in some cases the barring is not equal. It's not the same on one side of the quill, versus the other. So I'm just trying to find an example of that here for you. This Hungarian partridge, this is an exception to the rule. This is the cape off the nose of the bird, the crown. This is where the true barred partridge feathers come from for the partridge in orange. A lot of people think they come off the coverts, either the upper coverts, the greater, or the lessers. And in some cases that's the way we tie today. That's usually the only access we have. But the true North Country spider with the partridge in orange came off the crown of the bird. So you can see here the bit of a cheek patch. You had the cheek patch pulled away, but this was just off the nose between the eyes and going up over the crown of the head. So these are very fine feathers to work with. Other birds that I use are mudhens, coots. This is by far the best dun feather on the market. Well, if you can even find it. In Europe they call them moorhens. But again, here on this left wing you can see the covert feathers, the greater, the lesser, the marginals, and on the underside it has a little unique little barring of grays, dark grays, light grays, speckling, and some white. And then the crown of the bird again. There's lots of stuff in here that we can use. I basically hunt my own, so this is why I have, North American coot. But you can certainly bring in moorhens from overseas. The best source is Cockhills in England. I know a lot of people use Menards, and Menards is okay, but Cockhills is by far better. Again, the other things that you can use are, I have a sharp-tailed grouse here, again one that I hunted. And in some cases you can get some hen capes, Brahma hens, that can have feathers down fairly small but still there's very few. Most of them are really a size 10 and larger. Even on the small side, the odd Brahma hen, this one here, you'll see that there's, you know, possibly some 12s in there, and then they get larger. So, but I'm thinking for where you're going to be fishing in the North Country, the vast majority of your spiders are going to be in that 12, 14, 16 range, possibly some 18s. I'll get a hook or a hatch chart for you for that area if need be. I have some friends that live there and still fish it. The other thing that you can use is jungle fowl and jungle fowl shoulders. These can get down. The feathers are nice and long and narrow, and on the tip sections you can get down fairly small with them. Here's a Hungarian partridge skin, and like I said, you know, a lot of people pull off the rump. A lot of the feathers you'll get in a bag will be the rump feathers or the flanks. Even down through the shoulders across the back, you know, you've got some pretty nice ones, pretty nice barred feathers, but again they're more size 10, 12s, which I don't think will do. So when I select a feather, this bird's been picked through pretty good already. I pretty much pull off the left wing, and there's kind of a reason for that. So if I take a feather off a left wing, well, I'll take a larger one just for example. Again, depending on where you pick on it, the markings on one side of the races may be the same, may not be, but I generally like to, you know, pick off the one wing feather off the left side, and I'll just clean all the original fluff away. And then what I'll do is I'll grab the feather either with my fingers or by the tip with a pair of hackle pliers, and I'll strip away all the barbs on the one side of the stem. We generally don't tie spiders there with both sides. That's more of a North American thing. Spiders are intended to be very small, very slender. So once I've prepared the feather, as you can tell, then we've moved all the junk away, and then I'll separate it into a V in this fashion. So my tie-in point right now is right in this V. Okay. I'll take a dozen feathers and prepare them just for tying sake, and then when I actually tie that on to a hook with thread, I've got them all pre-done. The other thing that you'll find on many North Country spiders is a little bit of hair. So the most common one is mole hair. Yep, mole, as you have probably never heard of before for the most part. This is a picric acid dyed mole hair, so it's kind of an olivey tone, a sooty gray olive. And then there's picric acid dyed hare's mask as well, which is common. But this is the wrong portion of it. What we need to use, and I'll just grab another rabbit here. So I take my capes, my hare's mask, and I cut them in half. One for the travel kit, one for the bench. If you look at the top of the ear, right up in here, this area here, this has the shortest and finest hairs on the whole rabbit. This is the stuff we use when we're building thoraxes or even putting into the body on a North Country spider. I don't know if you can see that. Okay? Cutting it off is, you take a pair of scissors, just cut it very fine edges. And a lot of times we would just use this the way it is, which is not the best way of using it. The best way to use this stuff is once you've trimmed it, create yourself a little pile of it. Just cut off a little bit more here. These are super ultra fine hairs. Okay, once we've done all that, created a little pile, then we want to throw it in a mixer. What's a mixer? This is a mixer. It's just a good old Costco pill bottle. I punched a hole through the top, stuck a little straw in there, which is actually a tube for tying tube flies. I'll take all that hair that I had now and lay that in here, and then just have the cap loose on top and blow into it, and that mixes the hair. So now I've got a usable volume of hair. Oh, where to go? That's already mixed. You can see that. Might even be some in the cat. Guess not. So this is what we'll use that's pre-mixed. And you can mix 2 or 3 different colors of rabbit hair off the hare's mask itself if you like, or mole hair. I only use the olive. I don't have any natural or black as the other mole hair that's fairly common. So let's start with tying a spider. Again, this is a size 12. I'll just mount up another one here for you. Size 12. And we'll just mount it in the vise. Okay. So I'll use the Zemperfly Pure Silk in the Vintage Orange, and we'll tie, I'm just loading it up into a Petitjean bobbin here because it's fast and it's easy. So as you notice, I have a little bit of cobbler's wax. Yes, it has to be cobbler's wax, not tacky waxes. The uniqueness about cobbler's wax, it has the way it's manufactured has a slight olivey tinge to it, and when you draw your silk through it, it actually changes the color of your silk. Okay, I don't know if you can see that or not. Makes it a little darker. This is really common on the olive type patterns, the olives and duns. You gotta remember there's about 300 different types of spider patterns out in the world that have been recognized, accumulated, and written up in books. I can send you guys, if you want, a recipe for about 250 of them. But we use cobbler's wax, and we basically start with just a catch right behind the hook eye, and go over it once, twice, 3 times. Make sure that's all pulled nice and tight. And the wax helps adhere it to the hook, gives it a little bit more strength. Yes, it does offset the color. And now we'll take one of those prepared grouse feathers that we had. And this one is probably a little long. I just tore it. We lay the stem up against the eye of the hook. The barbules should not really come past the bend. Okay, so that's the way to measure this. So with the colored side facing away from me, I lay it in on top so that we have this convex or concave shape. And I'll take 1, 2, 3 turns of the thread. I'll hold up my butt ends and cut it almost at a bit of an, you know, if you hold your scissors level to the hook shank, that'll cut it at a long offset, so that when you wrap, you maintain a very smooth body. So I'm just going to run down just slightly further than the hook bend or the hook point. You don't take it all the way to the back. Okay, so we're just right at the hook point. Now we'll do touching turns with the thread, moving back towards the feather. As soon as our last wrap is right at the stem, we'll flip of the feather, we'll flip it over, we'll take 1 2 turns in front. That's it. Now we run a set of hackle pliers. Now you can run whatever hackle plier you have. I prefer a kind of a spring-loaded hackle plier because these feathers are very delicate. They're very easily torn. They can move. If you don't have a quality pair of hackle pliers, they'll rip and tear a lot of feathers on you. So this particular hackle plier has a little rubber pad on it, and I can just grab this by the races through the quill, and now any tension that I put against it, if I pull too hard, the spring will extend for me. So it's 1 full turn, 1.5 turns. Here's where we come up beside, bring the thread up through, pull this to a 90-degree angle, and we'll take 1 wrap over top. Now you can let your feather go with your hackle pliers. Keep this to 90. A lot of people want to cut it off here. I don't. I'll take a second turn. I'll pull all of this back. Quill, the races, all the barbills, and I'll do a 3-knot whip. 1, 2, 3, right behind the hook eye. Pull good and tight without breaking the silk. Hold the silk tight, and then take your, you can either cut it away if you want, but I like just taking the quill and tear it away. And this is how I finish off pretty much all my most of my flies. My spiders especially, there's a little trick I learned, but I run this on my dry flies, my wet flies, exactly the same tie-off procedure on a hackle. So now, as you can see, this North Country spider, when it's flowing in the water, will have a little bit of translucency to it. These hackles will open and close around the body, giving it movement. So we'll tie one more for you. We'll do the same thing, same color pattern. We're just going to add one thing into it, and that's the fur body. Some people like running tinsels in that. You certainly can. The tinsel that I would use is a very flat, thin mylar. It comes out of a sewing shop. It's called Sulky. Let me just get that for you. My favorite is a opal, a Mirage opal, but I just grabbed the silver here. But as you can see, it's called Sulky. And it's a holographic. There's about a dozen different colors of holographics. It's very, very thin, as you can see. This is probably the only thing I would personally really use other than a 0.1 mil wire. It would be considered a dry fly wire. You can get some wires out of Europe down to 0.04, but they're not, this is stronger than the 0.04 wire, so all it's really doing is leaving you a ribbing effect. I don't know that I would bother going to that extreme unless I was tying for a fly tying competition for show. So let's start another pattern here. This time I'll use the French silk. Same, little different color. I'll just remount my bobbin here. And again, I'll wax the thread, and as you can see, it's already changed color. The waxing of the thread is really important to have it stick to your hook well. So right behind the eye, quick catch, 1, 2, 3. Remove the tag end. I have a long long feather there. I'm just looking for a shorter one. We'll run a short little partridge feather. This one might be a bit short, a bit too short, but that's okay. We'll measure it. Yeah, it'll do. So, first wrap, second wrap, third wrap, fourth wrap, fifth wrap. Now I'll cut off tip of my feather. And if you don't want a segmented look, just unspin your thread. So it's a counterclockwise position. That way your thread will lay a little flatter. So I might do that for the back half of the body. And we're almost too far. And then I'll bring it forward. And I'll stay about 4 or 5 turns back. Now, this is where I'm going to finish and build my thorax. So I'm going to unspin my thread like I'd mentioned. And if I'm still into the wax section, it can be difficult to find the open thread. But if so, then I'll move into where it's not waxed. And you'll see the thread want to open up a little bit more. No, it's not. Doesn't want to do it for me. I waxed it too far in. Okay, so if I push it in, it'll open up. If I keep it too tight, it'll still want to twist and stay roped. So very carefully, without cutting the silk, stick a point in there and separate the two strands. But I should grab the right tool to do that. Let me find the right tool. I have a Culdenard picker, that'll work. What's a Culdenard picker? It's a 3-pronged bobbin with little hooks on the end of the points for picking out your CVC. There, I think, by Joe, we got it. Okay. So we still have wax here. If we don't, we can always put some on. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll take this spun, or this a little bit of mohair, a little bit of rabbit. Again, very small amount, very fine. You can see that. We'll spin our thread. Let it go. It all spins up in there. Just bring up our bobbin. If you need to move some of this up, go ahead. You can push some of it up. And now what we'll do is we'll finish off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns at the thorax. We'll come in front. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I built You got to remember, now that we've built a little bit of thread behind the eye of the hook, we need to minimize the amount of turns we're going to have when we lash in our hackle. So take one full turn and a second turn, so kind of 1.5 times. Come up 90 degrees with your hackle stem. Second turn. Pull it all back, lay one in front, and now whip finish. 1, 2, 3. Pull down. And hopefully your thread breaks in the right place. Like I said, it's very, very soft thread. And take your stem, because I didn't keep tension on it and didn't remove it while I still had it under pressure with the thread still in place, I'll just remove it with a pair of scissors. So that is some really basic stuff. Spiders are not fancy. I don't believe that when you are going to be fishing in England that you need fancy spiders. Keep them basic, keep them simple, keep them very functional, keep them proportional. That proportion is probably more critical, and color. So again, profile, proportion, color on these fly patterns are what makes them very, very functional. How you fish them is also functional. A lot of people will fish them with a 45-degree downstream cast, let it swing through. That works, but you miss a lot of fish. You're better off casting 90 degrees or slightly upstream, let it swing free drift, keep a tight line to it, keep your rod tip high. They're not long casts, they're only 20-25 foot casts, maybe, on 9-foot leaders, 9 to 12-foot leaders, and you can run a team of these, 3 of them. The heavier one I would run further on the point. Tags short. Raise and lower your rod tip as it swings through, and then when it gets to 45 and swings out, you might get a hit, you might have a follower. Set at a 45-degree angle, not over your head. The other way that these fish exceptionally well is a straight upstream cast. Again, keep it short. Think of fishing a long French leader kind of technique as you cast upstream and you're lifting your rod tip. And that's what you're going to be doing with this. Cast upstream, lift your rod tip, and you'll get a 4 or 5 foot drift out behind an obstruction. That's all you need. You don't need long drifts. So it's much like, similar philosophies like in short line. Short drifts, not really long drifts. Pick a target, lay it in there, above the target, let it drift into it, lift your rod as the flies come to you. You always want to maintain a tight line, and you want to only lift the rod as fast as the current speed is bringing your flies to you. You might want to run a curly cue ahead of them, 5-6 feet ahead of them. That might work for you as well. But anyways, this is a little bit of stuff on North Country spiders. Hope this works for you guys. Again, good luck. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call me. Feel free. Have a great day. Good tying. Good luck.